Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
Today we're going to talk about the nurses' strike. Almost 40,000 nurses are going on strike, and we have 5 strike dates in February: the 12th, the 13th, 14th, 19th, and 21st. So that means 15,000 hospital appointments will have to be dropped each day. So let's talk about the nurses.
That's the figure that they put out. According to what I heard on the news there last night, they'll be expanding it to other hospitals that heretofore weren't affected, so it'll be practically nationwide from the sound of it. Now, this strike of the nurses, by and large, in my opinion, seemed to come out of the blue, and suddenly they were on strike for more pay. The thing is about the more pay, their salaries, even for one starting as students, it's not too bad. You're starting at 14,000 for students that are going to be trained in a very professional way for 3 years or 4 years to be nurses. Now, that's the way it was years ago when nurses were in demand worldwide. They trained, a lot of them trained in England because you had to pay nearly here in Ireland to be trained in Vincent's at some of these places. So Irish nurses with a primary school education were accepted as nurses in the UK and were in demand because they were very kind to patients and people liked them worldwide. They were marvellous nurses in those times. So now we're talking about the nurses now that are on strike. Well, one thing that I noticed was they wanted to be on a par with other university graduates. You see, for some strange reason in this country, it is not as if we had nurses that were had a problem abroad. Quite the reverse, and they only needed primary school education, a primary cert, and they were marvellous nurses, and some of them, a lot of them came back here and were in demand and were very good with patients. I regret myself, and just an observation, because my late wife, very sadly missed by me, she was attendant in one of the major hospitals here, the Mater Hospital, and I have to say that the nurses, where they wore uniforms with a hat, and they were very professionally dressed. Now they're not dressed in that uniform that they used to wear. They have something coloured blue that, to all intents and purposes, looks like a pyjamas. Okay. So John Malone, with my visits to the Mater Hospital and my poor wife, who was attended by nurses, some of which half the nurses were for some other, or half the staff were from some other foreign countries with a not a great command of English. So these are factors that while the nurses are on strike for more pay, I sympathise with their business of being on strike, but I just would love to know more reasons as to why.
Well, I mean, they've actually said that the cost of living, first of all, in Ireland is very, very high, but also the amount of deductions on their salary. If a nurse is on 40,000 a year, she comes out with 26,000.
Well, that's not right, because they do an important work, without a shadow of a doubt, to look after the people that are not well and that need to make a recovery, which they do in hospitals. Now, I think the fact that they're earning goodish money when they're nurses for a few years, up to 46,000, just the ordinary staff nurse, if they're anyway senior, it goes up to a good amount. So I think, aside from the salary, if it's looked on a gross business, looks all right, but it's the tax situation, the income tax that is stopped on them, is where the problem, I think, lies more than salary increases, because I find myself as a pensioner, when I get a rise, it doesn't come to me, it goes to the tax, and I'm actually with the last tax business, I'm getting less on a employee and a pension that I had as an employee of a company that provided a pension, and it wouldn't be huge. It'd be order of 600 and odd euros a month, which is reasonable enough in addition to the state pension. So yet I'm paying tax on that, which I regard as a very modest amount for a retired person to live on, and quite frankly I think one should be entitled to, as an older person, not to have to pay any tax at all unless one is earning quite a very good salary.
Leo Varadkar and Finance Minister Pascal O'Donoghue gave a very lame excuse when they said if you grant the increase at a cost of 300 million, it would trigger knock-on claims by other public servants. But surely it's time to give everybody a pay rise.
Well, you see, I think he mentioned 300 million. Now, we don't know where that figure come out of, because I disregard a lot of figures that they quote. It's obviously round figures, and I think the fact that that they're paying so much tax, that's where the problem, to my way of thinking, lies. And it requires what I call an honest, straightforward government that hasn't got this, what I call, spin, putting out figures and then creating a climate of fear that suddenly the cost of all the other state employees, because we have the state employees is actually expanded under this so-called prudent government. They're spending money like as if it never existed. They've got 2 billion of an increase, a windfall from corporation tax from some of these foreign companies that they hadn't budgeted for, and they had a surplus of 100 million, and I think he made out that it was their prudent behaviour. But if you get an extra 2 billion and you only manage to have 100 million to show as a surplus, and give the impression that somehow or other your prudent policies enable you to have 100 million profit surplus in the year, when you got an unexpected 2 billion bonus. Do you see where I'm coming from? So when you mention 300 million there, I'm afraid I just don't accept that figure. What I do accept, the nurses have a legitimate complaint. They earn good money, but half it goes on tax, and so hence then if they're renting accommodation, there was a time nurses had nursing homes when they were single, and so they were able to have a lot of spending money. Nurses in Navan lived in the nursing home, but when they got married then they obviously and had tough times even them times. This is not something that's it just happened now. People had great difficulties in raising mortgages years ago, as I experienced myself, because the interest rates was running at about 16, 17, 18%. Now the interest rates are low, but unfortunately the price of houses is astronomical. Why pay a big money for a 3-bedroom semi-detached houses that you wouldn't swing a cat in, and be looking for 300,000-400,000 for sale? They're not worth it, and when you go out and leave your door you can't go anywhere because of the traffic. These are very ordinary houses that people should be able to afford on the kind of salaries that nurses can earn, provided that they're not taxed to the hilt.
The other problem, okay, we've covered wages, the economic side of it. The other thing is the working conditions of your average Irish nurse. She might have to look after 7 to 10 patients in a day.
Well, you see, I think that's another problem, that their workload is too high. It's stressful. They're according to what we hear, that they're looking after more patients, because sometimes when nurses leave, they're not replaced. Another factor that seems to ticked about this, nurses were guaranteed a 37.5-hour week for the quite good salaries, but apparently it crept up to 39. And from what I understand, and I don't know if it's accurate, because I spoke to a nurse actually to try and get a picture, and they said like you might have to do extra time for which you don't get paid. And I think then the way they're treated by management leaves a bit to be desired. That's another factor, I believe, depending on the hospital. All I know is that when my wife was in the Mater Hospital, I thought a lot of staff didn't seem to be overworked in my book. They seem to be in the offices. These ones now that are graduates and wear this kind of a blue type pyjamas type outfit. I think that's the colour of it. So I didn't see them looking after patients as much as what that the sort of the narrative is. It's only when you have to go into hospital or you're with somebody that has to attend that you kind of see this figure, and you have an appointment at a certain time, say 2 o'clock, and so you could be there until 6 or 7 in the evening.
In 2018, the General Secretary said that 100,000 people were admitted were forced to wait on trolleys and chairs without a proper bed.
Oh, it's correct, because my poor wife had to wait until 11 o'clock at night on a chair from 1 o'clock, and I was there, had to leave at about 7:30, and she got a bed at 11 o'clock on a I think it's a Thursday night or a Friday night. No, Thursday night. So she was in Friday and then discharged on Saturday by this doctor that does over cancer situation. So that was very unsatisfactory, even for my wife and then for me, that she saw fit to discharge her without the proper examinations according that she was in dire need of. And I saw nurses stuck in offices there, and they weren't going near patients. And when they did, they didn't seem to be too pleased, and nursing assistants had to do a lot of the work that heretofore nurses did. So my opinion is that there's too much staff in hospitals, and yet the patients are not being treated the way I think that they should. No patient should be on trolleys unless just for a very short while, because in other countries that have far bigger populations than ours, that situation doesn't arise. So
is it any wonder then that, the nurses immigrate to Dubai and Australia, where you get tax-free wages? The patient ratio is about 4 patients to every nurse.
Well, that's a fact, I suppose, but funny enough, in life, it's not money that actually gives you satisfaction.
Well, we covered money already. I
know, but I'm just saying that there must be some other reason for this dissatisfaction. It's very easy to blame the money, and we just spoke about the tax situation. That seems to be the problem, because I think myself, I could have went to Australia for Buckshee and be put up for 3 months in the 70s, and it was passed and all to do that, and be put up. There was none of this business of what you have to do now, fork out and make sure you have 10 or 20,000 that you can look after yourself for a period. So to go to these countries, and you mentioned Dubai, they're not treated too well there by patients in that country, so because it's a Muslim country, and they have very disrespectful towards nurses and people like that, as I know from past experience. So money isn't the answer to everything.
No, but I
think if they're treated well and treated that they have enough of their take-home pay that they can afford to save and buy a house if they wish to buy one in the city or in the suburbs, that should be possible, and any government worth its salt should enable that and stop yapping about costing 300 million or whatever it is. We have a hospital for children that they're building, and they seem to be clueless as regards the price of it or what it would be. So I'm not surprised that nurses are dissatisfied, and it mightn't just be about pay, even though that's what they're saying.
No, it's actually it's also an issue of quality of life. That's what it has to do with.
Well, I think that's what it is, and we all can have a little problem. Well, I won't say that. We can have a problem with that, and I think when you're working, often experience it doesn't matter what occupation you're in, but nurses are in a very necessary and important position, because after all, when you're unwell, you need a bit of support in the hospitals. You need kindness extended to you and understanding, because you're going to be stuck in a bed. And this business of trolleys is absolutely dreadful, and what I experienced with them sitting on chairs, and plus then people that are suffering from drug addiction, 24/7. It's not just a weekend thing. You have to contend with this. So that's a very sad affair for nurses and for patients that are waiting for a bed.
Thanks very much, John.
Thanks very much, Oliver.